Hello, I am Rex. You're watching Animate with Rex YouTube channel. Today we are going to discuss why do we celebrate the beginning of the new year on January 1st. The celebration of the new year on January 1st is a relatively new phenomenon. Our modern celebration of New Year's Day stems from an ancient Roman custom, the feast of the Roman god Janus, god of doorways and beginnings. The name for the month of January also comes from Janus, who was depicted as having two faces. One face of Janus looked back into the past, and the other peered forward to the future. We can thank Julius Caesar, who in 45 BC proclaimed the Roman Empire would adopt the Julian calendar, which identified January 1st as the beginning of the new year. Since long before Caesar's time, date-keeping was dicey. In fact, the 355-day Roman calendar that immediately preceded Caesar's Julian worked on a 4-year cycle where every other year, an additional month was inserted between February is the last month of that calendar year, and March is the first month of the year. This was done in order to catch the calendar up with the Earth's orbit of the Sun. That additional month, called the menses intercalaris, brought in the missing 22 or 23 days, and to even things up, took another 5 days from February in the years it was present. Since the calendar had been designed to ensure the proper observance of religious dates, priests, called pontifices, were responsible for declaring when the intercalaris month should begin and end. Since these priests were also involved with politics, they sometimes misused their power by intercalating days or not intercalating them, merely in order to lengthen or shorten some magistrate's year of office, or to increase the gains of some government contractor, or to inflict loss upon him. By the time Caesar came around, the Roman calendar was in shambles, and in 46 BC, Julius Caesar commanded that it be changed. The Julian calendar's beginnings were as crazy as the old Roman calendar at its worst. In order to wipe out the consequences of past neglect, it was necessary that the year 46 BC, called by Macrobius the Annus Confucianus, should extend to 445 days. The normal number of 355 days had already been increased by the addition of the ordinary 23 days, inserted after February 23rd. As many as 67 days, divided into two menses intercalares, were now interposed between November and December. After this year of confusion, the new calendar really started. Intercalation was abolished, and each year was increased to 365 days, with a leap year added every 4th year February. Months of the calendar after Caesar's shake-up followed the old Roman calendar closely, and most are familiar to us even today. Along with these changes, Caesar set the new year to January 1st. Why? Since 153 BC, January 1st was the day new consuls in Rome took office, and Romans had commonly used the name of the two consuls to identify a specific year in question. Thus, by officially making January 1st start the new year, it simply lined up with the consular year. As to why the consular year started on January 1st instead of the original Roman calendar New Year's Day of March 1st, this isn't known. There are references that seem to imply that January 1st may have begun marking the new year as early as 189 BC, which proceeds when the consular year started beginning on that day. Although the Julian calendar was relatively accurate, its use of 365.25 days in a calendar year, as opposed to the precise 365.2425 days, over centuries, created a discrepancy in the calendar. In fact, by the time Pope Gregory XIII, 1572 to 1585, became the Bishop of Rome, the Julian calendar had lost 10 days. It was this discrepancy that brought about the reformed calendar, actually beginning 20 years before the calendar took effect with the Council of Trent in 1563. church leaders wanted to restore the spring equinox to the date it was when the First Council of Nicaea was convened in 325. By 1563, the equinox was falling on March 11th, rather than March 21st. As simple as making a papal decree, Gregory issued the Inter Gravissimus on February 24, 1582, and nearly 8 months later, the last day of the Julian calendar, October 4, 1582, was followed by the first day of the Gregorian calendar, October 15, 1582. Voila! Today, the Gregorian calendar is the unofficial calendar of the United States and the United Nations, as well as most countries in the world. Since before even Caesar's time, people celebrated the New Year. In ancient Babylon, this began after the spring equinox in March, and part of the celebration including subjecting the king to ritual humiliation. In fact, if royal tears were shed, it was seen as a sign that Marduk, a god, was satisfied and had symbolically extended the king's rule. After he was murdered by a small group of his friends, et tu, Brute, the Roman Senate made Caesar a god on January 1st, 42 BC, a date which coincided with the time-honored practice of making offerings to Janus in the hope of having good fortune throughout the year. Throughout the Middle Ages in Europe, January 1st's New Year's celebrations were discouraged, as they were seen by church leaders as a pagan practice. Instead, other days were often used as a substitute, varying from nation to nation. This changed when the Gregorian calendar was instituted and, at least in the Catholic nations, January 1st once again became the official New Year. And it slowly spread from there with the Gregorian calendar. As mentioned, many Protestant nations ignored the Gregorian calendar for some time. England stuck to the Julian calendar until 1751 before finally making the switch. Orthodox countries took even longer to accept the change in calendars. Russia, for one, did not convert to the Gregorian calendar until after the Russian Revolution in 1917. The funny thing was, in 1908, the Russian Olympic team arrived 12 days late to the London Olympics because of it. So if you really find my video is helpful, then please hit on like button below and don't forget to subscribe.